Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association Conference here in Cloudcroft, New Mexico. We have the great pleasure of being joined by Francis Gary Power Jr. He is the son of Francis Gary Powers, the famed and to some people infamous U-2 pilot that was shot down. He's also the author of The Berlin Airlift in Enemy Territory, two amazing graphic novels made for youth that we'll be talking about, as well as the new book, Spy Pilot, which is all about your journey to really coming to acceptance of your father's story. How old were you when your father was shot down?
Well, I was born in 1965.
Okay.
Dad was shot down May 1st of 60. So I was not yet born. He was married to his first wife, Barbara. Once he came home from prison, the marriage disintegrated.
Ugh.
Basically, the stress, the anxiety, the notoriety, the paparazzi following his first wife around, she couldn't handle that stress.
Yeah.
And so the marriage disintegrated while he was in prison.
Ugh.
He gets home. He's debriefed by the CIA. He gets a job at the agency, at a desk job for a year, training agents on what to do if captured, how to go through an interrogation.
Wow.
He meets my mom in the CIA headquarters as they're walking around a corridor. He bumps into her, spills his coffee down the front of her. Great pickup line, right?
You couldn't get a better story.
And so, let me buy you another cup of coffee. How about lunch? How about dinner? They get married in 63.
Wow.
He moves to California in 63 to be a test pilot for Lockheed. And then I'm born there in June of 65.
So you literally grew up with like this entrenched in your life. It's not like an event that happened when you were older. How did it, was it something that, at what point did you become aware of your father's story?
I was always aware that Dad had been shot down, imprisoned, exchanged. As a kid, we talked about it. There, he wrote his book about it. People would ask him questions about it. But again, I'm a kid. So from 0 to 12, my informative years, I want to go play. I want to go have fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool, Dad, you know. But I didn't really have an interest. At about 10 years old, I started reading his book, Operation Overflight.
Okay.
And I would read a chapter or a couple of pages. He'd come into the bedroom, tuck me into bed. I remember the scruff of his beard, kiss me goodnight. And I'd ask a question or two. One of the questions I always liked to ask was, how high were you flying on May 1st? And he'd always explain to me, Gary, I can't tell you that. Why not? And he said,
I'm your son.
Yeah, basically. Well, if I tell you and you tell your friends and the friends tell the parents and the parents tell someone else, I could put other pilots and other planes in jeopardy. Yeah. But Dad, you can trust me. I'm your son, right? But no, I can't do it. So I'd pester him day after day. And one day he came home from work. I go up and give him a hug. Dad, how are you flying? He looks at me, scowls. Wasn't high enough that day. Go to bed. So that's one of the few stories I actually remember the conversation with.
Wow.
But the reason he was joking about that is, he wasn't high enough to avoid the missile.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he descended.
Yeah.
It just meant that he was at his assigned altitude and he wasn't high enough that day.
Well, and one of the big misconceptions is that the U-2 wasn't actively hit by the missile. Right. It was in proximity of it, and it caused enough damage that
that's exactly
structural damage happened to the plane.
There were so many conspiracy theories and rumors at the time. Dad defected. He landed the plane intact.
Yeah.
He spilled his guts. He told the Soviets everything he knew. He didn't follow orders. It was sabotage. It was pilot error. All these things were circulating around because the American government, CIA, Air Force, could not bring themselves to believe that the Soviets had the missile capability. It was easier to blame the pilot than to publicly admit we were behind the Soviets in missile technology.
Yeah, you were behind the arc.
Yeah. In Cold War mentality, we're better than them.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but it's also the fact, like you got into your presentation, at the time the CIA was a civilian organization because to do that would have been an act of war. To fly a military plane over the border would be a full-on act of war with Russia. But if you're flying a civilian plane
with no markings,
anything like that, it's technically different. And that was one of the first. And it's interesting that you bring up all the stories about your dad, because that was straight up conspiracy theory before conspiracy theory existed.
Right.
Like that term didn't come around till Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
So the fact that this was the rumor mill going on in America, and this is what so many people believed. is really fascinating.
Well, that's one aspect of it. There were other people in certain government positions that knew better and knew more information, but the general public,
Sure.
I call them armchair generals.
Yeah, absolutely.
He should have done this. He should have done that. Well, if I was doing it, I would have done it this way.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't there.
You weren't there. Yeah. Exactly. And, the idea that all of those things, of course, were secret, but that so many people considered him a traitor for so long.
Yeah. Oh no, and that's because they believed what they read in the newspapers.
Exactly.
Just like on the internet today.
That's it.
Google tells the truth.
Well, and that's just it. It really does bring to bear a huge point of we don't change the way humanity takes in data and internalizes it and looks at it through their polished filter of reality. Does not change.
No.
The only thing that changes is either the narrative being pushed forward. Or even the fact is it's come out with the latest Leslie Kean articles, things like that, oh no, they fully used what the community of UFO believers was saying as cover for black bag operations and black projects.
Right.
Because why go through the problem? Like, we don't even need this dude whose job it is to come up with a cover story anymore. You're making them for us.
That's
you
right,
know?
Chris.
So yeah, it's interesting. And when did you start was this something that you talked about with your friends at school, things like that? Was this like a badge of honor for? Because I mean, of course, you're talking pre-Vietnam era, and your dad was a special pilot, things like that. So it's not like he was just a normal pilot. You'd think that would be something that, like, on the playground, you're playing your dad, things like that. That when you're playing soldiers with your friends, like that would be something that you bragged about.
I didn't really brag about it.
Sure.
I remember.
Well, I mean, like a kid is prone to do.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, my dad. But I remember my dad coming into, I want to say, my 5th grade or 6th grade class, and it was a school gathering in the auditorium, and he gave a talk. And so I'm 8 or 9 years old at the time.
Okay.
And I think that was cool. Dad came in to talk.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he talked about. It had to be about the U2 incident.
Yeah.
But I was just all excited that Dad was in the school. And so there were that type of dynamics where other kids' parents didn't come in and give a talk.
Yeah.
So that's kind of set me apart a little bit. But I had really good friends in middle school, 2 of which I'm still in touch with today. And then I had 2 really, really good friends in high school that I'm still in touch with today. And they were really my core group that we hung around and had fun and did kid stuff with. My dad died when I was 12. I'm going into 7th grade. And so all of a sudden, I'm at this school, brand new school, all these different people, a couple of people from my old school with me. But I didn't know anybody. And the rumor was, that's the kid whose dad had died. So it wasn't really the fact that, that's the spy's kid.
Yeah.
It was just that was the kid that the dad's died. And so I was very introverted in high school. My dad had just died. I didn't know what to do. I was going through emotional correction and healing, mourning. And so I just didn't fit in. But I got through school in high school. People would come up to me, ask me questions. Oh, Gary Powers' kid.
Yeah.
Why did he do this? Why didn't he do that? I didn't know the answers. So in college, I come out of my shell. I'm curious. I want to find out more about my father. Why are there conspiracy theories? Why are there rumors? What is the truth of what he went through? And like I emphasized today, what is the truth?
That's right.
If I knew the truth, I could answer questions. And so that's what set me on this path to find out the truth of what took place so I could answer questions correctly and dispel the conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Because they come on thick and they come on strong. And they're...
And one of the things I've learned over the years of debating with some conspiracy theorists is that no matter what piece of evidence I show them, the original photograph of the wreckage with the shrapnel holes, oh no, that's photoshopped. The original transcript of my father's debriefing, oh no, he was told to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you got to take some things for face value.
Well, and even for the fact of, but this is actual provenance, like from my father.
Yes, his debriefing transcripts.
Yeah.
His oral tapes that I had transcribed, where he, vocally talks about what he went through and the shoot down and what happened and how he got out and how he was treated, how he was exchanged. So I have all that on audio tape that I had transcribed to CD so I could listen to it.
Yeah, and it brings about a huge point that happens in a lot of communities, and that's that want of confirmation married with confirmation bias.
Yes.
You know, the
Yep.
fact that like you're looking only at the things that will prove what you believe, and what you believe is right anyway.
Right.
So, and that comes to a hard point with a lot of people, and especially when you're talking about things like this and government secrets,
Oh, yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of stuff.
Well, it ties into UFOs.
Absolutely.
It ties into the projects that we were doing to find out our enemy secrets, which include remote viewing, satellites,
That's right.
U-2s, ground agents. It's all one big component to find out the data to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because during your presentation, you actually went into an experience that your dad had.
Yes.
And not many people are aware of this experience, that like in flight, he actively witnessed a craft.
Yes.
So get into that a little bit.
So back in April of '64, my father's a U-2 test pilot for Lockheed, Burbank, California. He's woken up sometime in the morning. He has to do a high flight. Somebody from Washington, D.C. probably sent a message. There's a unidentified object over Merced, California. Who can we get up there to identify it? And so my dad says, hey, I can get up in an hour and a half. He takes off at 11:30. They vector him in over Merced, California at 73 to 74,000 feet. And he sees this object above him. And so he makes one pass and radios back, you know, hey, I've seen the object, blah, blah, blah. Goes in, vectors in for another pass, sees it again. And he afterwards writes down his experiences, what he saw and what happened that day. So the thing that sticks out in my mind is that at one time, the first pass, he's looking at this object above him, and he, you know, it's like 10,000 feet above him, about this big. But then in hindsight, he's going, wait a minute, if it was only 10,000 feet above me, it wouldn't have stayed in my vision that long. So therefore, it must have been 100,000 feet up there and this big.
Yeah.
But you can't figure out the depth perception, so there's no way
without
really
knowing
to tell.
the actual size.
Exactly. But he's documented this, wrote it down, and it's I read it at the UFO Museum in Roswell, New Mexico, and I've read it here at the IRVA conference.
Wow.
So those are the only people who know, and now the audience here.
Yeah. And you know, it brings about a point that I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of the way the ARROW came about, the All Domain Anomaly Reconnaissance Office. The people that's basically, it's all agencies where people like your father, pilots, people like David Fravor, things like that, are able to go and report a sighting without losing wings, without losing flight capability, without losing a 20, 30-year career, things like that. And the fact of, granted, I think him especially being in the Special Access Program to begin with, and being sent specifically to observe that object.
Yeah. They knew something
Had
was
he
up there.
just came back from a, like, hey,
Guess what
we
I
have
saw?
a training flight, guess what I saw up there? That would have been treated 100% differently.
No, they knew something was there, and they wanted someone to go investigate.
Yeah.
So it's not just the pilot saw it on his own accord. The pilot was tasked to go see what was there.
Yeah.
It's a very unique part of Cold War history.
Exactly. And speaking of Cold War history, you're actually part of the Cold War Spy Museum, things like that. How did you become involved with that? How did that
a couple of
get
different museums. One is the Cold War Museum.
Oh, Cold War Museum.
Which I founded in '96 to honor Cold War veterans, preserve Cold War history, educate kids on the time period. I started to give lectures in the Washington, D.C. area in '92 to '95. I came out from California. I'm doing my graduate degree at George Mason. I'm starting to get settled in the community, and I'm giving these lectures on the U-2 incident. I walk into an AP history class or other history classes. I get blank stares from the kids. They thought I was there to talk about the U-2 rock band.
Too funny.
So that's what I realized. I have to teach kids about Cold War history.
Yeah.
So combine that with the fact that the Cold War veterans were not being recognized for their service to our country, and I came up with the idea to create the Cold War Museum. Honor vets, preserve history, educate kids. I thought it was going to take 3 years, fundraise $3 million, shouldn't be too hard. Took 15 years to get brick and mortar.
Wow.
We are located at Vint Hill, Virginia, 45 miles west of D.C. We are right next to Gainesville, but it's a Warrenton, Virginia address. And Warrenton is another 20 miles up the road. We're open on the weekends, staffed by volunteers, midweek by appointment. We've hosted CIA groups, we've hosted NSA groups, we've hosted FBI groups, we've hosted kid groups and general public groups that come in and want to see the artifacts that we have. Yeah. We were able to collect a great collection of Cold War artifacts from 45 to 91 in the 15 years we were getting brick and mortar. We have items from the USS Liberty incident,
Oh, wow.
the USS Pueblo incident, the Iranian hostage crisis, civil defense, Vint Hill, an active military base staffed by CIA, NSA, and Army Security Agency to monitor. It was a listening post. So we've got artifacts from their time period in the museum.
Yeah.
On the second floor, flags, banners, regalia, uniforms that bring this story to life, where people can go and actually touch Soviet-era, East German, West German military uniforms and see the difference in the ranks and the file and this and that. But more information online, coldwar.org.
That is awesome, man. And the idea that you are bringing these stories, especially with the graphic novels. I got these for my son. He's 8 years old, and stuff like this is a really, really great way to start getting kids interested in history. It's one of those, I was always fascinated hearing my grandfather's stories, things like that. But it wasn't until I was later in life that I truly got a love of history and really started absorbing that in a different way.
No, you're exactly right. This is one of the reasons I did the graphic novels, is I wanted to make sure I could teach students about Cold War events and activities.
Yeah.
So I've got one on the U-2 incident, I've got one on the Berlin airlift, and I'm looking to do my next one on the Bay of Pigs and Cuban Missile Crisis.
Ooh, cool. And in these.
And we can also do one on remote viewing and Stargate.
Oh,
and how
absolutely.
The kids would just eat that up.
They would eat that up like crazy. And you know, especially when you're talking about things like Bay of Pigs, stuff like that, will you be getting into some of the subterfuge and that kind of stuff involved with the Bay of Pigs?
Oh, yeah, no, we'll do it. It's got to be at a 5th grade, 10th grade level.
Sure.
So we will do a general outline of what this event was. Hire the graphic artist to do the cells. I'll start to put in text to go with the when the submarine was forced to rise up out of the ocean as opposed to being sunk by a nuclear depth charge. The submarine's captain was was at his discretion, could have shot a nuclear tipped missile, a torpedo at one of our ships. Had that captain of that submarine done that, there would have been World War III.
It would have been done.
But instead, he surfaces and we avert nuclear war. So we were going to be able to put in the theme of the Cold War, a Cuban Missile Crisis, as to what had happened. The theme of the Bay of Pigs as to what had happened. Not a detailed, but a synopsis.
Sure, absolutely. And, that is one of those stories that, once again, has conspiracy theory wrought all about it, and that's just it. The whole Cold War era in and of itself is fascinating because of the literal subterfuge under which people lived.
Well, I don't. Some of your viewers are probably young. Or younger.
Yeah.
I'm 60.
No,
so everybody's younger nowadays.
We range 24 to 54.
So that audience level usually has not heard about the U-2 incident.
Yeah.
Doesn't know what duck and cover drills are.
Yeah.
And so this whole mindset of the younger generation not knowing this Cold War history, I think it's very important that we do teach Cold War history, much more than we do now in high schools.
Yeah.
Because everything in the world happening today is a direct result of the Cold War or the end.
Yeah.
For example, war in Ukraine, Eastern versus Western in a surrogate country.
Yeah.
That's right out of the Cold War playbook. Vietnam, Korea, Afghan war. Yeah. You look at the war in Gaza now. Now I understand that Israel and Hamas, the Palestinians, go back biblical. I get that.
Sure.
But in 1947, Israel became a state.
I was going to say, when you're talking about the actual creation of the border and the setting aside of land, and that's something that I bring up all the time, is cultural differences aside, everything else, you have to understand that there's one group of people who a whole group of countries said, you're going to move over here now? And when they look through the fence, they're like, but 50 years ago, that was my grandfather's goat farm. Like right there on the other side of the fence. Yeah. And yeah, that's just it. Like I just turned 50 this year. Mm-hmm. I remember things like the fall of the Berlin Wall. Yep. That is one of the most memorable things in my life because I remember the stories about like machine guns on the wall and stuff like that. Like I remember hearing that on the news.
Oh, yeah, and people who would escape with a hot air balloon, man-made, homemade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or digging a tunnel under the wall.
Yeah.
Or fitting themselves into the engine compartment of a little car just, inches away from a fan blade so they could get across the border.
Yeah.
It's just crazy ways that people were so desperate to escape communist East Germany.
Well, and especially when you start looking at history is just a mirror unto itself.
Yes.
Forever. It's literally, the way I explain it to people is history is very much like stepping into a dressing room mirror, where it's the mirror looking at the mirror, looking at the mirror, like it is a eternal reflection upon itself. The ways in which we recycle history.
And well, one of the things I'm doing also is, in addition to the books I've written and the lectures I give internationally, I'm hosting Cold War espionage tours of Europe.
Nice.
I'm doing my 4th one, April 2026. The deadline to sign up with a deposit is December 15th, pay in full January 15th. We will fly from Washington, D.C. to Berlin. We'll stay a few days in Berlin, northern Germany, Denmark to Aalborg, over to Copenhagen, and then down by ferry back to Germany to Berlin. So we'll go by drop points and safe houses. We'll go by atomic fallout shelters, nuclear fallout shelters. We'll go by some museums like the Berlin Spy Museum and do these tours for about a 10-day tour in April of 2026.
Wow, and that's a fascinating way for families to be able to do. You also do tours in D.C., don't you?
That's right. I do Washington, D.C. spy tours. I look for groups who are coming in so that we have the bus, 20 to 30 people, take them around to drop points and safe houses. In D.C., we'll go by Aldrich Ames' home, Alger Hess's home, Wild Bill Donovan's home, as well as a drop point used by Robert Hansen to contact his Soviet handlers. Plus other stuff, Civil War spy stories up to modern day. We could do a stop at the Spy Museum. We could do a stop at the Cold War Museum. We could do a stop at the NSA Cryptologic Museum. It all depends on the group's interest and budget.
Yeah, and once again, those are great ways for families to be able to talk about this stuff and to really open your child's mind not only to the history of it, but to the world politic of it.
Oh, yes.
Because once again, when you understand these histories, you really do get a much better grasp, and I think a much more grounded grasp on even the wildness going on in our society right now.
Oh, yeah.
And the hysterical mindset that a lot of people in many of these para communities, things like that, get into when it comes to conspiracy theories, stuff like that. Like these stories and the Cold War are a direct root of those conspiracy theories because they almost, once again, encouraged them because it made their job easier.
Exactly. If parents want to bring their kids to the Cold War Museum, they can learn about the Cold War. If they want to bring their kids to the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., they can learn about espionage from biblical times to modern day, some of which overlaps the Cold War time period. If they like more ciphers and codes, they can go to the NSA Cryptologic Museum, which is a great display on the early Civil War ciphers, the modern, like Enigma in World War II, and some of the modern ciphers we have today where the kids can get on a little computer game thing and try to crack codes.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun at these places.
Cool. Now, you, of course, helped consult on the movie. I almost said enemy at the gates. Bridge of Spies. Now, this is something that I get into. I got into it with Travis Walton about his experience and the cinemization of his experience. Even Whitley Strieber's book and the liberties that were taken. What was it like for you to be able to consult on that film and to at least put the family legacy side of it behind things to try and advise them of like, well, this is what my dad was like in the back, because if you understand what he's like at home, you can understand different things.
No, it was an honor and a privilege to be a consultant for the Spielberg movie Bridge of Spies. It came out in 2015. It stars Tom Hanks as James Donovan. James Donovan is the attorney who represents the Soviet spy Rudolf Abel after his capture in the 50s. He's the attorney who brokers the exchange between my father and the Soviet spy in 1962. So to be on set, to be interacting with Spielberg and Hanks and the props crew and the makeup artist and the hairstylist and the wardrobe people, seeing how a movie is made from behind the scenes was an awesome, awesome experience. The movie, though, you have to remember, and Hollywood in general,
absolutely,
the big picture might be historically accurate because there was a Gary Powers, there was a U2 incident, there was the Summit Conference, he got shot down, etc.
But they did meet on a bridge.
Yes, exactly. But the details, what was said on that bridge, only the people that were there know.
Yes.
So Spielberg, with his genius, has to recreate this dialogue, suspense, to keep you on the edge of your seat, so you come back for more movies.
Yeah.
Hollywood does that really well.
Well, and that's just it. The idea that, yes, inspired by true events is what it
Exactly.
says. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that, while these events happen, that what we're watching is a dramatization, and that all of the things aren't necessarily fact.
Right.
So that may lead to further modern conspiracy, stuff like that, with people's misunderstanding of the first conspiracies and then that being there.
It's like, what's that the game where you tell a secret to somebody and they tell a secret and kills
telephone.
them? And then all of a sudden it's the completely different thing?
Absolutely. And that's just it. It can happen in a heartbeat. Yeah. So the fact that number one, you reached out to people that were connected to Spielberg.
Correct.
And that they were like, hey, this is fantastic that you actually want to be involved with this.
I wanted to be involved. Well, not really involved. I wanted to make sure they understood the family's concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
That there's a lot of misinformation. If he bases it off the misinformation, the fake news of the time, they'll be painting him in a negative light.
That's right.
If they base it off the declassified information that's come to surface, he's a hero to our country.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that got across. Some misinformation, some fake news did make it in.
Sure.
But it's what was being told and talked about at the time.
Absolutely.
So it's historically accurate,
yes,
but it's not truthful.
Yeah. Well, and it still leaves you, the viewer, to sort the facts for yourself and go out and find more.
Right.
Like even whenever I taught religion to junior high and high school students for years and years, the last class, my lesson was always, I may have been lying to you all year. Go out and find out.
Oh, yes.
Go find out.
Don't
go
get
read
one
more.
Source.
Go ask questions. At the day you stop asking questions, you should stop drawing breath.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, number one, for picking up the mantle of this story, because I really think that it is one that speaks a lot to the era and to the hype and heightened sense of the era and where that communicates to our modern time, but also how we can relate these stories to children. So the fact that you are putting these into context that an 8-year-old and up could understand is fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Another thing for parents who are watching this, or grandparents who are watching this, talk to your children. Talk to your grandkids.
Yeah.
Share your stories of duck and cover and civil defense and the threat of a nuclear war.
They can handle it.
Yes,
they can handle it. And that's just it. If you let them see it in a movie, they may not be able to. But if you openly talk to them about it, you'd be surprised. Like I used to tell people all the time, I taught ages 4 to 40. The only difference is by 40, you should know better than to pull people's hair without permission. That's the only difference between a 4-year-old and a 40-year-old.
Put it in the inkwells.
That's right. That's right. So, have those conversations openly about what the world was like back then, because it will come to pass again. So thank you so much for your
welcome,
time.
Chris. And one other thing is, if the parents or anybody would like to contact me, I can be reached through GaryPowers.com.
Exactly.
I would be glad to host people if they're in the DC area, take them over to the Cold War Museum, help students with reports. I'd be glad to do that by email and or Zoom. I do this around the country and also through Zoom for schools that are studying this period of time.
Too cool. Well, once again, before we let you go, let everybody know where they can get a hold of you, where they can get a hold of your books, where they can come to reserve tours and everything. Gary.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
The camera.
So you can go to GaryPowers.com to find out more about my efforts and what I'm doing. You can go to SpyTour.com to find out about my DC Spy Tours and my upcoming international tour in April of 2026. You can go to coldwar.org so that you can learn more about the Cold War Museum. On the Cold War website, in the very bottom in the middle section, there's a button, and I've forgotten the title of it, but it's like Cold War Stories. If you click on that, another page, hundreds of pages come up of actual veteran stories, primary sources that students can do research from.
Amazing. That is a beautiful compendium. I will be adding that to our Curious Research website.
Hey, thank you.
Because stuff like that is what I am all about. So once again, thank you so much for your time during this very busy conference while you are online checking out everything from Francis Gary Powers Jr. at GaryPowers.com. Everybody, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That is where you can find our YouTube channel. It's where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can share the episodes. That is also where you can find our events page with all of our, this is now event 26 that we have covered. So stop on by, check out all the interviews from that. When we come back from this quick commercial break, we will continue our live coverage here at the International Remote Viewing Association in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, right after this, folks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.